This is the Swans blog's SwansCast, the original Sydney Swans podcast. A new man with a new baby. It's about bloody time the Big Budwah made his AFL return. Game 300 was so far too long ago, so let's celebrate Game 301 with a big bag. In this week's episode, we review the Swans' impressive win against the Lions and look ahead to our round 2 clash against the Crows at the SCG. We discuss Patrick Dangerfield's suspension, Buddy's return, the AFLCA votes and Rising Star nomination for Gulden, team changes, the match ahead, and we give you our matchups, key points, predictions, and the weekend forecast. This is your host, Justin, and with me tonight is Stephen Trelaw. Stephen, thank you so much for joining me again.
Thanks, Justin. And footy's back, and for the Swans, it's with a vengeance, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It puts to, I guess, pale our predictions last week when we were kind of just saying, it'd be great to see the Swans play again.
Yeah. No, I don't think... Well, I'd be very surprised if anyone was truly expecting that sort of result, but I'm sure everyone's was certainly welcoming it.
Well, I think the kiss of death was, but doesn't he vote for every team that's supposed to lose?
Yeah, he'd be the only one disappointed with that prediction.
I know. And then I had a look at the predictions again today, and I think, I don't know, I don't like our chances because the experts have given Adelaide no chance. So, well, we know what happened last round.
Yeah.
I don't like being favourites. Well, we'll kick it straight off. Top of the agenda, Dangerfield. He has copped a 3-week suspension, and I'm a little surprised that Geelong didn't even appeal it. They just accepted it.
Yeah, it was a bit strange. Because I had a kind of brief look through social media during the whole thing without, letting it anger me too much, because social media is just a wonderful place.
Oh, yeah. A true reflection of society these days, unfortunately.
Oh, yeah. But unless you follow us at the Swans blog on all the social media channels, that place is a utopia, of course.
Oh, actually.
But yeah, I saw such a range of responses of what people thought Dangerfield should get. A lot of people thought it was a good bump play on, and a lot of people were saying throw the book at him. So I don't think any result that the tribunal would give would make everyone happy.
Yeah, I agree. It's one of those cases where you're sort of damned if you do, damned if you don't. And looking back on it, there was some stills that were taken right before the impact or at the point of impact. And Dangerfield had left the ground. He claims, protecting myself, I tucked in to protect myself. Yeah, sure, okay, you got to protect yourself when you're bumping. But there's also due diligence for when you're making that act, that when you hit that other player, you're going to make sure you're not wiping them out for the rest of the game and then some. And that's what has happened. And it was interesting reading an article from Nick Rewalt, or more sort of commentary about it from when he got suspended for a bump a few years back. He said that it was just a subconscious decision. It's trained into you. You just do it. You don't even think about it. It's instinctual. And it's really up to the players and the clubs to train themselves not to do that. And a lot of people have complained over the years, like the last 10, 15 years, that the bump is being banned. And I don't think it's a case of the bump being banned. I think it's a case, and players have rightfully picked up on this, especially Lee Montagna and David King, is that the speed of the game has increased so much that the bump is almost irrelevant now. There's almost no place for it. And you love to see a great bump, especially the Port Adelaide player you were sharing gifs around on social media, Byron Pickett.
Yeah.
He used to lay him in sensationally, but obviously the guys he laid out were laid out permanently, so we don't want to see that, but we still want to see some good quality hard hits.
Yeah, it's a really fine line they have to draw, isn't it? I mean, I can totally see, and you look at I believe Shane Tuck was one of the guys who had that sort of, impact from concussions for the rest of his life. And that's certainly nothing anyone wants to see. Personally, from my view, if that means, we have to get really kind of, clamp down on those aggressive bumps, then so be it. I think, if you have to lean one way or the other, I think I'd lean towards player safety. But I don't envy the people who have to make those decisions in the end.
Yeah, and it's like a lot of people talk about it as being a game of inches, centimetres, even millimetres. You just got to think back to an incident with Blake Caracella in the 2000s when he slipped over and the player chasing the ball slipped over as well. And it was just the angle and the hit, and then that was the end of his career. So it's one of those things where if you're going to go for the bump, you need to be careful because the impact that you're actually hitting these players at, it's like they're running face first into a brick wall. Especially if there's hip involved, like any contact to hip to head, it can do so much damage. So, yeah, in hindsight, 3 weeks. I think 3 weeks is about right. 3 to 4 weeks would have been ideal. The tribunal did back up the severe grading, which is good. And now there's a bit of a line in the sand. We know what the severe grading is. And players have a responsibility to make sure that they don't do that anymore. And I think the other thing that really irked me about Dangerfield's ongoing commentary about it after the fact, like, oh, I'm not this, I'm not that, this is ridiculous sort of nonsense, was the ball had already been disposed of. The ball had already exited the area. This is just a plain old smash him after the ball's gone. Ugh,
yeah,
it's kind of hard to call him dirty, but there was a bit of sniping to it.
Yeah, I mean, I can kind of see why you would, like, in a match situation, why you would do that. Like, you don't want Dangerfield wouldn't have wanted Kelly to be part of the next play if he didn't lay that bump and then, Kelly ran on and was part of the next link in the chain of handballs or whatever it was. So I can kind of see why he did it. But again, as you say, you got to be just so careful when you're doing that. And kind of linking to what you said about, how Dangerfield's been responding to this whole thing. I don't think his lawyer at the tribunal hearing did him too much justice. I'm not sure if you saw, but he actually used Siri as a source to find a definition of the word severe. So
I did read that, and it was exactly what they were arguing.
Yeah, I hope they got their money's worth with that one.
Yeah, I hope they got Apple and iPhone involved in that one, and got some sponsorship money out of that one.
Yeah.
But look, it's 3 weeks. He's rubbed out. Unfortunately, he's going to play against us, but they've got a massive match on the weekend against Brisbane. Now, on to the next thing on the agenda is Lance Franklin finally making his long-awaited return. Didn't play a game last year. He didn't play much in 2019. He's finally playing around to 2021. It is great to have the Big Budwah back.
Oh, yeah. The amount of confidence and the amount that... I mean, we've got such a kind of young core, especially in our forward line at the moment. To have someone like that, he's one of those players who... he kind of inspires the players around him, which I think will be great. Before this was announced, I was kind of a bit hesitant that Buddy should be named. I did cop a little bit of flack of it for having this view from some people, but my thinking behind it was, I don't want Buddy playing. Buddy who's, anyone who's 34 years old and hasn't played a game in 18 months, I don't care who you are, you're not going to be coming back at your absolute best. And I don't think we should expect Buddy to be back at his absolute best against the Crows. But yeah, he played half a Resi's match last week, and it was actually a Resi's practice match. So, getting back to that full AFL kind of speed and pressure might take him a little bit to get adjusted, I think. But if the health and strength and conditioning crew think he's ready to go, and to credit to them, the injury list for the Swans has been looking great so far this year, then let him at it.
100%. And it's interesting where they're going to play him, because you look at the way that the Swans structured up. They structured up beautifully. They had a lot of good crumbing forwards, small crumbing forwards that did the most damage, but they're able to also extract a lot out of McLean, Sam Reid, and Logan Mcdonald. So it's kind of interesting to see where they slot him in and who comes out. And I think the obvious choice for who comes out is most likely going to be McLean, unless they anticipate to put Franklin on a wing, which I think is a really good idea. I think you raised with me not that long ago that it was Richo who nearly won a Brownlow medal playing on a wing at the end of his career.
Yep, 2009, I think, from memory. And yeah, he was... the count went to the last round.
Yep.
And I think it might have been Joel Bowden or someone who robbed Richo of the 3 votes to win it. So, look, I mean, whether the Swans will do it or not, I guess Buddy's done a lot of running as part of his rehab, like a lot of running. So maybe that wing role, to kind of push him a little bit more outside the forward 50 might be a good move. But look, I'm I'm not too kind of concerned about where he plays, just so long as he can get through a full match without being injured.
Yeah, same. And look, it's not without precedent either, because Nick Riewoldt was one of the most recent players who shifted from that inside 50 to the wing, and he was playing. You could in matches in he was going nearly as deep as full back. Sam Reid has been playing more that flanker wing role for a lot of his career after making a start as a forward. So it's definitely not without precedent. And given Franklin's ability with the ball, which is outstanding, he's one of the best ball users in the competition for most of his career.
His field kick is amazing.
And he's got
underrated.
Great vision, great hands, great mark on a lead. He will be a perfect wingman for us, but it'll just be interesting. So it's time to get on to the match review, Stephen. First things first, can you please tell us who the Rising Star nomination for our round one was?
Whoa, arrow. I will give anything just to be like you. Oh, that was amazing.
I mean, the song or the vote?
No, mate, Errol's game.
Oh, yeah.
Wow. He was just allowed to do whatever he like.
I'd never seen that.
The way he played. Yeah, he was he was given a bit too much freedom, I think. I'm not sure if it was just, the Lions as a whole having a crap night, which, let's face it, they did.
Yep.
Or just underestimating a first game player, but he was just given so much room, and the quality of the kicks he made were, absolutely amazing.
They were.
Stuff that you wouldn't see from a 100-game player.
Well, that's the thing. You look at how he played and how Braden Campbell played, especially how the way that Campbell was using the ball in the first quarter and a half. You'd swear they'd been around for years.
And that's the thing. I guess they kind of have, in terms of being around the Swans system through the academy. I think what the young lads, especially kind of the guys who are in their last years in the academy, they really get taught the Swans way of football.
Yeah.
And that's really paying dividends, once they get drafted and start playing senior footy. But another guy who probably deserves a mention as well is Logan Mcdonald.
Oh, yeah.
Wow, what a first game he had as well.
Yep.
To take one, he only took one contested mark for the match, I think, but his, strength off a lead was amazing. Probably why he didn't get too many contested marks, because he was just, beating his man. But the one contested mark he did take was on Harris Andrews, who's probably, widely considered the best defender in the league. So,
yep. And he was really good. It was really impressive. And you could see that his time in the Sandful had really given him a boost for the season, his first season in AFL. And I know that we talked Waffle, sorry.
Yeah.
Gotta remember where these players come from. But a season of senior football, and apparently he's been playing seniors since he's 14 years old, and you can see he's just that big. But you can see how much of a good stat it's put him in, because that was the main concern for Ugle Hagen for the Western Bulldogs, about how quickly he could integrate. And we were talking last week about how quickly Logan Mcdonald could integrate and how much of a season he could play. His first game, you're just like, it's not going to be a problem. Not a problem at all. So,
and I said last week, I think I remember saying, I wouldn't expect him to play every match this season, and I still wouldn't mind giving him a bit of extra rest here and there, just to make sure that he grows and develops at the best possible rate he can. But if he does play every game and he's putting out results like that, good on him.
Like you're looking at the King brothers, for example. That's the sort of quality he's bringing, and they've brought that quality a season in. They've played a season football before bringing that quality. He's bringing it from the first game. So there are some very exciting players in the AFL right now, and he is definitely amongst that group. So when it comes to the draft, I think Sydney are going to have two of the top three players from that draft year, hands down.
Yeah.
And that might not even be including Campbell yet. So it's looking good. AFLCA votes also came in earlier in the week. Absolutely no surprises for the top two. Callum Mills, 10 votes. Errol Gulden, 7. Tom Hickey, 7 votes as well. So the top 3 votes from both coaches clearly went Mills, Gulden, Hickey. Then it's a bit of a split for the rest. You got Isaac Heaney on 3, Dane Zorko on 2, and 1 for Harry Cunningham. And Harry had a good game. But I know that
Yeah.
when we did our player ratings, they were pretty lined up, except we did some ratings for some other players as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think Harry's a underrated player for us. Whenever you kind of look around the social media traps, you kind of see his name as one that's usually there to be dropped, especially if someone needs to come back in.
And I
But as
always disagree with that too.
yeah, I mean, look, he's part of the leadership group. He's not the guy who you'll notice on the stat sheets too much, but in terms of what he does, like a few years ago, he was like absolute quality in terms of his quality of delivery inside 50. I think a couple of years ago he was like league high at one point in terms of that sort of percentage efficiency. But he can play that role as a small defender as well. He can distribute. I think is just such a asset to have. One of those guys who aren't the top 10 draft picks or anything like that, but the guys who just do their thing week in, week out. I just anyone who kind of says that he should be dropped kind of tells me a bit more about them, I think.
No, I agree 100%. And you look at the way he played, I likened his performance to a Nick Smith kind of performance, just flew under the radar. You didn't notice him, but anything he did was good. Every time he had the ball, he was damaging, and his opponent did nothing for the entire match. That is how you measure the effectiveness of a defender. Does the forward have an impact? And whoever he played on did nothing. Yeah. So he has been an amazing contributor since he switched back into defence. So it is really good to see him back there and playing really well. Now, the ratings for the week have ended. So we are posting up ratings each week. So make sure you go onto the site and post up your ratings. Most people agree with our ratings. A few sort of like, for instance, people voted Dane Rampy a little bit lower than we did. But I did the vote. So I was pretty supportive of his game. I thought he did very well. So our top 6 players, we had Callum Mills on 10, Errol Gulden on 9.5, Hickey on 9, McDonald, Robottom and Rampy on 8.5 each. It was a great performance by the team, aided by the fact that Brisbane gave up 10 minutes into the first quarter, which was bizarre.
Yeah, they came out with such a good start. Zach Bailey was kicking him from 50 metres out, coming from midfield, and I kind of saw the score at the start. I was like, oh, all right, here we go. But yeah, it was such a great team lift from there. I was checking in the third quarter. Where I have it, I did have the stats here. So in the third quarter, we had 27 more disposals. And we went at 81% disposal efficiency compared to Brisbane's 60.
That's huge.
And just 60% is, sort of a bit off, but acceptable. 70% is,
average.
You're doing well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anywhere between kind of 60 to 70% is good. 80% is just, you're gonna annihilate them.
Well, their pressure rating must have been a mile off in the third quarter.
Yeah, exactly. One guy who I'd like to have a chat about in terms of his game, Tom Hickey. Wow, I was not expecting that from him. The guy who's
Same.
This is his fourth club he's played at. He's always kind of played second fiddle. Gets that first ruck roll when there's an injury sort of thing, but the way he was moving around the ground, and albeit it wasn't against a star kind of quality opposition ruckman, but the way he played, it was almost kind of Brodie Grundy like in the way that he was kind of like an extra midfielder.
He was massive. His performance was, I'm just going to say, it was out of left field. I've never seen him play like that. And if he can play like that for us, this is probably the most absurdly good trade anyone could possibly have made. Yeah. And I said in the ratings, imagine what happens when you play a ruck. He had game high 9 clearances, and okay, he wasn't up against a potato, but he was literally just it was not only dominating but destroying his opponents, whoever he was up against. It was a demolition job. 23 disposals, 14 of them contested. He had goal assists. He out-tapped his opponents. He had score involvements. He had 400 metres gained. A ruckman with 400 metres gained. What is going on?
Yeah.
So it was just phenomenal watching him play. We got beaten in the centre clearances pretty convincingly. But we also smashed Brisbane pretty convincingly. So, no complaints.
No, definitely.
Can't complain about that one. But Lachie Neale, he had 7 clearances, and our next best was Robottom with 3. So it was a bit of an interesting one, a bit of an interesting stat result. We did beat them in literally every category too, as far as stats goes, except for clearances.
Yeah. I think, Lachie Neale, last year's Brownlow medalist, he was actually kept to quite a quiet game, I thought. And, as credit to our midfield that our structures and that could shut down, one of the best midfielders in the game.
Yeah, we did really well. I just opened up the possession heat map for quarter 3, and it is... I've never seen anything like this. Brisbane's hotspot is dead centre of the ground. Sydney's hotspot is the entire ground. So that is just how dominant we were with the ball. We had it on a string, we had it everywhere, and Brisbane just couldn't even get near it. So it was phenomenal.
Yeah, it certainly was that third quarter that was telling.
Yeah, and we're led by 50 points. It would have been nice to win by 50 points, and that was only with about 6 minutes left on the clock, and then they just got three gimmies at the end. The impressive thing for me was that they never really got any scoring from good structure or good play. A lot of it was scramble early on. Even early on, it was just turnover and punishing on the turnover. Then when they made that comeback in the second quarter, it was mostly just some good centre clearances, but also turnover football.
Yeah, quick rebounds as well.
Yep.
One of Danaher's goals was kind of, running out the back. He turned Lloyd inside out, I think it was, and kind of strolled into an open forward 50. So, it was that quick movement that was, I wouldn't say, causing us too much stress because, look how it all ended up. But
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's a case of they couldn't maintain it, or maybe they just didn't have the mentality to maintain it. But I just haven't seen the Swans play like that. And I guess that happens when you have, virtually no pressure for half a match. I mean, you can probably play like gods in that case. But it was just stunning to just watch the players do whatever they wanted with the ball. And
we had 23 marks inside 50.
Yeah, we did.
That's ridiculous.
It is. It's you shouldn't have 23 marks inside 50. Okay, it's a little disappointing we only kicked, 19 goals, but you look at the fact that Papley got a mark and then he dished it off to McLean. McLean got a mark. Then he handballed over the top to Logan for a little gimme in the goal square. That's 2 marks for 1 goal. So it was ridiculous watching them do that with players like Daniel Rich just walking back from the centre square. You got Harris Andrews 1-on-3, and it's just like, what are they doing?
Yeah, and just you did mention the 19 goals, and I did work it out. The last time we kicked 19 goals, I think, was like round 12, 2018.
Wow.
So, I mean, last year you can kind of discount with the shorter quarters and all that sort of thing. But, yeah, it's been a while since we've actually dominated a team that well.
Yeah, I think Adelaide. We beat Adelaide at the SCG, I think it was, by a similar score back in 2016.
Yep.
2019, we averaged 60-odd points. It was really not a good scoring year for us. And even 2018, we didn't average much more than 80 points a game.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's a really cracking effort and a really great way to start the season off.
Yeah, definitely.
In the end, we had the 4 debutants. We had Errol Gulden. I think we both equivocally agree that he was sensational. And if it wasn't for Callum Mills, he would have definitely got the 3 Brownlow votes. And I think he's pretty much locked in for at least 2.
Oh, yeah, and certainly, more importantly, locked in for a best 22 spot now. I mean, we can't imagine dropping him unless he's, particularly fatigued after a match or whatever. But, yeah, good on him.
It kind of reminded me of the Ben Ronk performance he put back in I think it was 2017. That
don't mention that.
freak match. And then the only other time he followed up was against Geelong with the 5 goals.
Yeah.
It's a shame because he hasn't come on since then. He's been used in such a weird way. But you kind of get those vibes. I was getting those vibes when I was watching him. Like, he's like Ronk, but more consistent, and he's got a far better field kick.
Yeah, his disposal is immaculate.
Oh, it is. It was absolutely stunning. And his ability to mark, too. 10 marks. He took 10 marks.
He took a contested mark against Daniel Rich, who's probably about 20 centimetres taller than him.
Yep.
Yeah.
Let's not say Daniel Rich had a good game. He didn't. He was putrid. Tom Hickey, we've already talked about. He was ridiculously good. He ended up with, just doing a quick refresh, the one of the highest AFL fantasy points, but also when we looked at the AFL player ratings, he was, I believe, top or second in the AFL ratings behind Neil. So Neil ended up with the highest player ratings, but Tom Hickey was second just, and it was a mile beyond his career best, an absolute mile. So that's just how good he was. Then we've got Logan Mcdonald, 3 odd goals on debut, absolutely sensational. 3 goals, 11 kicks, and 5 marks.
Yeah, and just the quality, the way he does his set shot and the way he goes through his routine and everything is just so calm and so self-assured, and he kicks it so crisply. And at the SCG, anything from kind of 55 out is just so you just have that kind of confidence that he'll get the job done.
Yep.
And it's so good to have that in your key forward.
Oh, absolutely. If he flushes it, it's going through the middle, and his kick is just solid. It's straight. There's no nonsense, no playing about. It's just simple. I really like watching him kick the ball. And then, of course, Braden Campbell.
Speaking of kicks,
highest rated player that we had in the academy. He had a quietish game, 12 disposals, disposal efficiency 92%. I recall he had 1 turnover, but he also finished with 4 intercept possessions. And he was being such a cheeky little bugger in the first half. He was doing no-look handballs.
Yep.
And like a first gamer doing a no-look handball. They'd be like taken from the ground, left on the bench from most teams.
If they stuffed it up, yeah.
Yeah,
and
exactly. You didn't.
Look, that's the thing. He's a guy who's in his juniors he kind of plied his trade as a midfielder who kind of drift forward every now and then. So that kind of contested play and that kind of instinctive disposal he's really good at. Him playing defense, look, I think it's really good because even as a midfielder, one of the things he could probably improve on was accumulating more of the ball. He's brilliant as an impact player, but I think putting him in defense where he doesn't have that kind of pressure to dominate and hold possession of the ball, where he can just when he does have it, do his brilliant things with it. I think it's a really good spot for him to be while he develops.
Yeah, 100%. And the good thing about some of these changes with how we're putting the newer players and also switching around players like Harry Cunningham is that it is giving Lloyd more opportunity to go back to what he was doing earlier in his career and what he excelled at, which, let's face it, it's not defending.
Yeah,
He's a good ball user and a good distributor, and we were playing him in the back pocket. He is definitely not that good to be playing in the back pocket, I'm afraid. So, yeah, these new changes, I think, is great for the way that we used the ball, and it was evident that when we got the ball into the right players, into their hands, the ball was used supreme. Jordan Dawson was moved more further up the ground. He got some time on the flank and on the wing. He used the ball amazingly. Even Chad Warner came in. I mean, this is a guy who didn't look particularly impressive last year. Even looked a bit average in the preseason game. Just came in and he had a big impact. For a guy in his third game, he actually looked like he belonged.
I'm glad we brought his name up because he's someone who, I think is finally getting a chance in his, best role. He is a midfielder first and foremost. I think his games last year, he wasn't really given that time. He was kind of, shoved in a pocket and just was like, get used to the AFL style of gameplay and all that sort of thing.
The Brandon Jack treatment.
Oh, yeah. But yeah, look, I mean, he's really holding his own. And if he can, get some sort of improvement as the year goes on, find his strengths, play to those, then he could be a really good kind of, inside mid of the future to pair with someone like a James Robottom.
Well, check out his stats from the match. 19 disposals, 3 tackles. But this is where it gets really interesting, especially for a third game player. 7 contested possessions, 2 intercept possessions, 1 goal assist, 11 score involvements.
11.
15 pressure acts. He played about 3/4 of the match, just over, and he had over 330 metres gained with 8 inside 50s.
So when he used the ball, he was delivering it inside 50, which is really interesting for me. I kind of, see him as one of those kind of, inside balls who kind of dives in the pack and gives a quick handball out sort of thing. But that stat really surprises me, actually.
The other player, or I just really want to touch on briefly, was James Robottom, who hyperextended his knee early in the match, and he's definitely a doubt for this week. But even with a bung leg, just his performance and what he was able to do with the ball, he kind of reminded me of Parker early in his career when he was the link player. He wouldn't dive on the pack, but he'd get the ball out, and then he'd just distribute the ball very, very well. And some of the stuff Robottom was doing, he was setting up goals left, right, and centre.
And kicking them himself as well. This guy loves to kick a goal.
Oh, yeah. He loves a goal.
Which is always good for your midfielders to be able to drift forward and do that, and to be able to rest forward without wasting an interchange, because we only have, I think it's 75 now that you can use throughout the course of a match. So, yeah, no, it's really good.
I mean, he finished with 22 disposals and 8 tackles, 22 disposals.
Yeah, 8 tackles is huge.
Yeah, it is, especially with a guy who looked like he was definitely restricted. And he still played a lot of the match. Well, actually, I lie. He played just over half the match, but still managed 20 pressure acts. So, I mean, it's a massive game from someone who's clearly injured, played just over half the match, and he's got nearly as many disposals as Callum Mills, who played almost all the match.
And got the same amount of disposals as Dane Zorko, who's, basically one of Brisbane's most important midfielders.
Exactly. Look, I think we should talk about the injury list really quickly. We've got James Robottom, who's a test this week. Doubtful. I'd say it's probably worth giving him a rest. The Crows haven't got the longest injury list, but they do have Matt Crouch with a groin injury TBD. Could be a test, who knows. James Kelly, unfortunately, concussion 2 weeks, and Daniel Talia, knee still a week away. So I don't think they're going to be bringing in Talia for this one.
No, it's they're three really important players for the Crows. Crouch is kind of their midfield general at this point, and Jake Kelly and Talia, they're two guys who are so important for their defence.
Well, they would have been the ones to take Franklin. They would have rotated on Franklin. It definitely would have given it to Jake Kelly first.
Yeah, I mean, once you've got Franklin, then McDonald, then you've got someone like Reid who can now play as a third tall.
Yep.
In terms of importance on that sort of hierarchy. Suddenly our forward lines looks really dangerous.
And they might even try and stretch it with Hickey as well.
Yeah, if he rests forward, yeah.
Who's surprisingly good with using the ball for us in the first match. So yeah, it's going to be interesting seeing how Adelaide are actually going to structure up. Especially given that all they've really got in defence now is Smith and Dode, if they're selected in Brown. So they will definitely be short on height and I'd say a bit of leadership too.
Yeah, and I mean, especially they've moved Rory Led into the midfield. I think they're wanting to use Brodie Smith as a bit more of a midfielder as well. So yeah, it is their defence where it'll be interesting to see how they perform.
Yep, 100%. Now, we're looking at team changes as well. We're recording on Thursday night, so the teams aren't in yet, but obviously Lance Franklin is going to come in. I was touching before on Robottom, so Stephen will just have a guess at which ones, but I'm thinking that Franklin will come in for Robottom. What's your sort of thought there?
Yeah, I mean, look, I'd love Robottom to be fit and ready to go, but I think Franklin will come in for probably McLean, who's a bit stiff. I thought he played a really... useful game, but someone has to go. And then if Robottom has to go, then maybe someone like McInerney might be ready to go to come back in, who had such a good end of 2020 in terms of his form and the way he played. He can kind of provide another forward target as well, or play kind of that outside midfield role on a wing.
Yeah, I agree. Like McLean's going to be really stiff if he misses out.
Yeah.
But it is what it is. I mean, you could even look at maybe someone like a Sam Wicks as well, who might be one of those on the fringe. I did mention in my ratings that even though he played a good forward half pressure, small forward type of role, he still needs to find a way to inject himself in the game even more.
Yeah, I mean, look, 2 goals, 5 tackles. I think that's
it was great pressure. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, but I think he'll be wanting to set his goals quite high. He knows what he can do. We've seen what he can do. That practice match in the preseason, he was absolutely immense. So I think he'd be more stiff to be dropped than McLean would be. But I personally would love to just see him get as much game time as possible. He's had a few years in the system, can build up that endurance and just tackle anything that moves, which is basically his role.
Yeah, that's what we need from him. He kind of replaces, when you think about it, Gary Rowan and Ben Ronk in that way, which is really important. And it's interesting when you've got Wicks, Gulden, and Papley. I'm trying to think of all the small forwards trying to come to my mind. How they just rotate positionally now. And you've got Papley, who's kind of playing almost wing flank, kind of drifts into the middle. Gulden's kind of doing the same, and Wicks is just focusing more flank wing forward. It's a really interesting dynamic, and it's probably going to be a nightmare for some of these teams to match up on, especially when all three are good kicks at goal. They're quick, and they're punishing. They absolutely punish you 100% on turnover.
Yeah, I mean, it's that rotation. As I said before, less interchanges this year. You need players who can be versatile, and I think that's something that I may have criticised Horse for in the past. Not playing guys in their best position, but but I think that strategy is paying dividends now, especially with these rule changes that have come in. Just to to be able to change things up on the fly is such a good thing to have as a team.
Yeah, and our brand of football now, if we're going by what round one was as a brand of football, it's a very attractive brand of football. Out of the games I watched on the weekend, it's not that like frantic, chaotic, helter-skelter type, just all over the place, get the ball forward at all costs.
Richmond type, yep.
Richmond type, like watching under 10s football that, grown men are playing. It's not Hawthorn precise, like if they're kicking falls away, they go goodbye game plan. It's quick, but ruthless and skillful. And it doesn't depend on tackle pressure, and it doesn't depend on clearance either. But obviously, you still need that trademark great defensive stability and resilience, which I think with Rampy and McCartan there, it really is. It was excellent.
Yeah.
Which leads me to say, we're going into the preview of the match now. We've talked about changes. Neither of us mentioned Melican.
Do we have to?
No, let's move on. I'm just saying, we're not talking about him. We never even thought about it until then. So
yeah,
it just goes to show how stable the team is at the moment, and we don't need to make changes in that area.
And yet we still have the depth there if we need it, which is great.
Yeah, exactly. And he's on a 3-year contract, so he's not going anywhere. So preview of the match, history between the two teams. So the Swans have won the last 7 of 10 matches against Adelaide. And the last time we played them was last year in round 1. And we beat them by 3 points at Adelaide Oval. This is the weekend that the shutdown happened. I believe wasn't it Geelong and Hawthorn who played the last match of the round? Might have been like Geelong and North Melbourne or something like that.
Yeah, it might have been. But yeah, one of the highlights I remember of that one was Tom Papley kicking a goal and giving high fives to an absolutely empty crowd.
Yes. Yeah, that was brilliant, and he's just laughing about it. I love that. Heaney went absolutely ridiculous. He kicked 5 goals, I think it was that match. No, 4 goals. Yeah. 4 goals he kicked.
He was our only, he was key. He was our key forward target. He was our tallest forward, I believe, listed there, other than McCartan, I think, who, this is before he moved into defence. And, Heaney kind of took that by the reins, and that was the game where I thought, right, maybe Heaney shouldn't be a full-time midfielder.
Yes. Well, it's funny you say that, because last week he kicked 3 goals too.
Playing as a forward.
Playing as a forward. He played almost purely as a forward, and I think a lot of us have been saying for a long time, just play him as a forward. He's good to watch as a midfielder, but he's not as effective as a midfielder.
Yeah, and especially now we've got someone like Mills in there who's, I guess too many new faces in the midfield can be a bit of a challenge sometimes. But, I think Heaney is performing his best when he's that, sort of lead-up forward target who can push up if needed.
Well, I've just opened up the teams from that match. Florent, Heaney, Dawson is our forwards. Wayward, I'm not calling him Hayward, I'm just calling him Wayward now. Wayward, Lizard, and Lewis Taylor on our half-forward line. So,
very young, isn't it? Yeah.
Very young and very small.
Mm.
Now, you look at where they play now. Florent is playing a wing. Heaney's pretty much playing forward. Dawson's playing in defence. Wayward's playing in the VFL. Liz is playing on a wing. And Lewis Taylor's permanently injured.
Well, no, VFL now, I think. But,
yeah, in the VFL.
Yeah.
Yep.
He's one of those handy depth guys that I was talking about.
Oh, yeah. Very, very handy. I'd love to see him play again, but I think it might be a little unrealistic.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the other thing that's interesting is the last time we beat Adelaide at the SCG was 2016. We've actually lost twice to them since, including that 2017 match we lost by, I believe, 3 points.
Oh, okay. Yep.
So, yeah, it's been a while since we beat them at the SCG.
Yeah. But I think, it's been a long time since then. Just look what happened last week. I mean, Adelaide beating Geelong. What?
Yes, up by 30 points too at one point. I was just tuning in going, what is going on?
Yeah, that was crazy. I think this game, is it a danger one? Is it like a dangerous game for us? Yes. But
yes.
At the start of the season, I was thinking every game would be a dangerous game for us.
True.
I thought we, certainly wouldn't pull out a performance like we did last week. So I think, two of the, better teams of last week who performed two of the biggest upsets we've seen in a round one for a while. I think, well done for the AFL to manage to fixture this.
Well, I mean, well done for Adelaide winning as well last week to actually set something up, and us as well. I mean, congratulations and many thanks to Geelong and Brisbane not showing up. I mean, it helps.
Yeah.
But, I tuned in. I'm like, what's going on? 5 minutes later, I'm like, yeah, this makes sense. This scoreline is pretty reflective of how Geelong are playing, which is garbage. So it's just amazing watching that. And
praise Tex Walker for he has risen.
5 goals.
What a game.
Wound back the clock. And it was interesting listening to the commentary, especially for our match that night. And they're talking about the fact that like Sydney had 5 extra weeks or something like that to prepare in the preseason. And they're talking about differences and times and how much training you can get. But then you go and watch Richmond and Carlton, and it's not like Richmond played poorly. They actually played a decent game of football. It's just that Carlton were extremely good for the first 2.5 to 3.5 quarters, and they just fell away at the end. And it was just Richmond who just came through and won. And they weren't playing bad. Carlton were just playing that good.
Yeah.
And then you obviously compare that with Geelong and Brisbane, who played like absolute crap. So I don't think training time has anything to do with it. I think it's mostly between the years.
Yeah.
Yep. Now, the important thing is that we obviously can't let Adelaide have a 6-goal head start again.
Yeah, that'll be ideal.
Or let Tex Walker have a shot with about 20 seconds left on the clock to win the game.
Yeah, I don't think he'll miss it this time if he gets the opportunity again. The form he's in.
No, 5 goals last round, so we can't really give him a sniff because a sniff is all he needs, especially when it was banging him in from well over 50 metres.
Yeah.
But when we played him last time, we smashed him in disposals and clearances, plus 21 clearances, which is just ridiculous. Plus 17 contested possessions, plus 27 marks. But the interesting thing was 5 less marks inside 50. 5 less contested marks, but we had plus 2 marks inside 50. If I can get that one right.
Yep.
And we did have more pressure throughout the game, plus 7 tackles, just more pressure instances. But geez, that was such a close game in the end.
Yeah, it was. And we were a team who were depleted in terms of, who wasn't on the field. We weren't, quite as assured in terms of our structures. Some of our guys were, a bit fresh, too fresh.
Yep.
So, it was a great game to watch, and it was great that we got away with the win. But it was great to watch in the sense that, it was a bit of it was almost laughable to watch, Isaac Heaney do his thing and seeing mostly kind of, Hobbit-sized people around him.
It reminded me of that game against Geelong in I think it might have been 2017 or maybe 2018. I can't remember which year it was. The one that Ben Ronk went ham in, but also I think Dean Towers was playing then, Parker was playing in, and we beat them. Against all odds, we actually beat them with a midget forward line. It was Dean Towers in the fourth quarter who turned it around for us too.
Oh, yep, you got a better memory than me, mate.
I was at the ground, so I was just watching it. I'm like, holy crap, Dean Towers is playing good. But I'm just going to read some of the names off from last year's match, and basically it's a who's who of who's no longer playing in the team. Will Hayward hasn't played in the team for a while. Lewis Taylor, Sam Gray was delisted and re-rookied.
Re-rookied, yep.
Yep. Then we've also got Aaliyah, who was traded. Kane Brand, who knows where he's at. Sam Naismith may never play again. James Robottom was only really, I think, in his second season at that point. Ben Ronk in the Wilderness. McInerney, who had a good end of last year, but is still on the fringe. And Aridin, who's pretty much on the fringe.
On the, by those depth players.
Yep. So, we didn't have Reed, we didn't have Sinclair, we didn't have Franklin. It was amazing. Like, that performance was, like, last year's performance was really good. And we're going to need that again. But obviously, we don't have a midget forward line this time. We've actually got a really tall forward line now.
Yeah.
So
a functioning forward line, I think.
Yes, a functioning. Well, time will tell because, we chop and change every week. But if we look at the performances from last round, comparatively head-to-head, we had 51 more disposals than Adelaide, 8 more inside 50s. We also had 5% better disposal efficiency, and get this, 10% better efficiency once the ball was inside 50. That's scoring efficiency, which is pretty dang impressive. Overall, we had 6 less clearances, but we had 3 more centre clearances. And I think this goes to what you touched on before with the rucks, which is going to be interesting watching Hickey go up against their younger guy.
O'Brien, yeah.
O'Brien, who's not bad. He's not a mug, but,
I'd have him as a close to a top 5, maybe top 6 ruck in the competition.
Yeah, he's definitely no mug.
He's quality.
He's quality. He's a good young player. And it's just going to be an interesting matchup watching them go head-to-head. Obviously, with our 22, 23 marks inside 50, we had way more than they did. But interestingly, 19 more 1%ers, despite the fact they had almost 10 more tackles.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So those are pressure acts. So I think it goes to show that if we can bring the pressure again, we'll force... Because they also have an equally young team. I think we can force them into a lot of turnovers. And if we use the ball the same way as we used it against Brisbane, we will just cut them to pieces.
Yeah, I mean, they had a few debutants play last week as well, did Adelaide. Jimmy Rowe, who mature age South Australian player, came in and did really well in his first game, just slotted in perfectly. Sam Berry, who was actually, I think, is the brother of Jared Berry, who played for Brisbane against us last week. So they've got a few young blokes coming in. Riley Tilthorpe, their bloke they picked 2. Still hasn't debuted yet, but you'd think he'd come in at some point. So it is 2 teams who, I mean, arguably we might have been doing that rebuilding for a bit longer than they have, because how long ago was it that Adelaide were in a grand final?
2018. 2017. 2017. Yeah, not that long.
Yeah, the fall from grace for them has just been huge.
It has, yeah.
I think, in terms of where our lists are at comparatively, I think we might be kind of, going a bit more a pace of our choosing.
100%.
So I think that's why we'll probably go ahead with the win this week, I reckon. Yeah,
I'd be surprised if we didn't win, which is interesting because, as I said earlier in the cast, the experts have given us all 15 to zip, as opposed to last week when it was zip 15. So Kiss of Death is going Adelaide, and let's not hope Kiss of Death gets it 2 weeks in a row. That'll be a little bit embarrassing.
Just a tad.
We're $1.30 to like $3.30 favourites or something. So it's very, very heavily favoured for us if you're into the gambling kind of thing, which we don't advertise or advocate, but have a bit of fun.
Do it responsibly.
Responsibly. don't bet the house. Matchups, key points, and predictions. I'll just go through them really quickly. So we got one each. For my matchup, Stephen, I'm going for Mills versus Laird. Now, Laird had a massive game for Adelaide last round. He was arguably the most, apart from Walker, obviously, he was the most impressive player. You've got to get the ball to Walker, obviously, for him to kick it. But the way he was getting the ball and the way he was using it, he was just cutting up Geelong. And we really need to clamp down on him and stop him from doing it. And he's done it to us before. He's killed us before. We just can't let him do it again. So Callum Mills, breakout season, outstanding in the middle. We've got to use him, and we've got to make sure he punishes Adelaide and really make sure that he clamps down on Laird. If he can come away with 2 more goals again, that is perfect.
Yeah, and over 80% disposal efficiency for Mills as well, which is just so good to see. My matchup, I did have Rory Sloane and Luke Parker, just as kind of like, 2 guys who play a similar role. They're a bit older, but they've been, stars in the past. I think it'd be interesting to see who kind of comes out on top there, and you can kind of put Josh Kennedy in that mix as well. But while we've been chatting, I think whoever plays on Tex Walker, and I think I'll probably say Tommy McCartan at this point, he has such a big job to play on him. And if we can shut down Tex, I reckon that's the game mostly won there.
It's interesting that you're going with McCartan. I would 100% hands down have Rampy on him. He gives away a lot, but he usually does well against him. There have been times, though, when Walker's definitely got off the chain against Rampy, so
yeah, I think
have to work it. But you've also got
Rampy's done well. Rampy's done well against Tex Walker when Tex Walker's been down on form, which he has been for, let's face it, the past couple of years.
Yeah, true. I agree with that.
So I think Tex Walker in his prime will need someone with a bit of a bit more kind of height and bulk to really kind of force him in the contest there. And I think Tommy might be better off there. But I could easily see those 2 swapping on him.
Yeah, it's not like they don't have height as well. They've definitely got players like Billy Frampton, who's over 200 centimetres tall. They've also got really small players like James Rowe and Ned McHenry. They are small, under 180, quite zippy players. And then they've also got Shane McAdam. He's an athletic 183 tall player who can play.
Took a great mark.
Oh, he does. He's very energetic, and he can play tall and short. And then you've also got another one, Lachlan Murphy, who's very small. That's 3-4 players around 180 or less. So it's going to be interesting to see how we match up on them.
Justin, can I be blunt there?
Yep.
Most of those guys are spuds.
Oh, wow. Compared to ours, yeah.
Well, I mean, guys like Murphy who've been in the system for a few years, they've got another kid, Chase Jones, who, was hyped up in especially last year's preseason to, be the next shining light in their midfield, averaged less than 10 disposals a game. I think, they've got some good young guys coming in, but they've also made some terrible decisions, whether it's in drafting or development. And I think, in terms of you've got 22 players on the field, the players who are ranked 18 to 22, I'd have our guys beating those ones beating Adelaide's every day of the week.
Oh, yeah. And I'm not going to argue with that. I'm not saying they're great. I'm just saying, they've got a smallish forward line to go with a couple of giants.
Yeah.
So, look, you're right. If you look at if they're going to play Frampton, who kicked 2 goals on the weekend against Rampy, Rampy will probably beat him, but that's a bit of a risk because he's giving away 13, 14 centimetres plus about 15 kilos and a massive reach as well. So McCartan would be the obvious better pickup or better choice to play against him. It'll just be interesting when he goes into the ruck and plays that second ruck. Key points. I've got whoever uses the corridor best will win. Enough said. I don't even have to explain that.
Yep. And I had, as a kind of like a key question, can we keep up our amazing kicking efficiency?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, if we can.
Yeah, if Adelaide allow us to play that similar sort of game, bring out the popcorn.
Yeah, I would expect that someone's going to go to Gulden and clamp him down big time. But I think it's going to free up some of the other players as well to do what they do best. And we have a lot of, these days, compared to what it was a decade ago, or even 8 years ago, we actually have a lot of good ball users in the team. If you go back to when we were playing in grand finals 2012 to 2016, We had only a handful of quality A-grade ball users in the team. You're looking at someone like Jared McVeigh. Jake Lloyd was coming along back then. Lance Franklin as well. These are 3 players who could use the ball by hand and by foot. And then there was just a lot of players who were pretty average at using the ball. Josh Kennedy was good, but definitely not elite. You had Tom Mitchell, who was good, but not elite. Kieran Jack, who was definitely on the more sort of average side of things, certainly later in his career. Adam Goods was past elite. He was coming back down to more normal-ish kind of average. We didn't have a lot of elite ball users, but now we've got so many elite ball users that can just hit targets from 55 metres to 15 metres with no sweat at all. So it's I think we can, but it's amazing to watch them. Now, predictions for the weekend ahead for our match. I've got Sydney will have at least 10 more inside 50s than Adelaide.
Yep, and I've got Logan Mcdonald to kick at least 2 goals. And, I'm going to add this in as well to be a push for a Brownlow vote.
Oh, yeah, no, it's not a bad one. They will be stretched, and he surprised us all last week, and let's just hope he can keep on the surprise train and keep it going.
Yep.
Now, time for the weekend forecast. Wrap this up real quick. Sure thing. Stephen, do you want to give us your sure thing?
Yeah, so I reckon Port Adelaide play the Bombers this week. I reckon Port are going to absolutely tear them a new one. Bombers played really well against Hawthorn, but,
Well, they played a good first half. Let's just clear that up.
Yeah, that's true. But I think, during the preseason and stuff, I had Bombers and Hawks in my bottom 4 teams.
Yep.
I think the Bombers against a rampaging Port Adelaide side, them having a Lear in their defence.
Oh, no, I don't want to talk about it. Don't want to talk about it.
The amount of intercepts he had, oh my gosh.
They
played him in the right... They played him in the right role, and lo and behold, he actually does really, really well.
I was watching part of it just going, why did we do this?
Yeah, North were just kicking it. But it looked like the North were deliberately kicking into him every time they were inside forward 50. It was ridiculous.
Well, they probably mistook him for Majak Dor, who they delisted. So.
yeah. But yeah, I reckon Port will smash him.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you. My sure thing is that Hawks won't overturn a 40%, 40-point, not a 40%, but a 40-point deficit against the Tigers again. No chance. They're playing the Tigers, and just like you, I think they are going to get spanked.
Yeah,
by at least 40 points.
Tigers and not Bombers.
No. I've got for my most at stake the Cats without Dangerfield and starting the season zip 2. They are playing the Lions at I don't know what they're called, GMHBA now. Cardinia Park.
Just continue. Park.
Cardinia Park. Yeah. And your most at stake, Stephen?
Well, mine's very similar. I've just got Brisbane, who are playing at Geelong, where they haven't won a game for 18 years. Since 2003 was the last time Brisbane have won at Cardinia Park. I'm not sure how many games they've actually played in that time, but I imagine it's 18 years is probably a few. And they might be starting the season 0-2. So
there you go.
A lot at stake for both teams there. But if you want something that's a little bit different as well, I'd also have Leon Cameron, who lost to St Kilda last week, up against a Freo side this week. If GWS lose to Freo, Leon Cameron could be out of a job by halfway through the season.
Oh man, if they haven't fired him by now, I'm not sure they're ever going to fire him.
Yeah.
Jesus, that would be a shock. Let's just put it that way. Doomsday scenario. I've got Essendon repeat their 2020 demolition of Port Adelaide. If that happens, if they turn up and destroy Port Adelaide, wow! Like the whole favourites thing for the year would just go right out the window.
Doomsday for our footy tipping.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Doomsday for everyone. If they managed to do it again. It was ridiculous last year when they did it. It was absurd last year when they did it. If they do it again, people are just going to be like, well, they're flakes. Port Adelaide are flakes on the road.
Yep. And go ahead. My doomsday scenario, I did have something, but I don't want to jinx it, so I won't say it. Instead, I'll say, for my doomsday scenario, Buddy Franklin comes into the Swans team, plays forward, and suddenly the forwards mix the chemistry and synergy that forward line had would just fall apart. Whether it's, our midfield being too buddy focused like we have been accused of in the past, or just things not clicking. If that happens, because who's going to say drop Buddy? Like, who's brave enough to do that?
Me.
Yeah.
That's why I said earlier, put him on a wing.
Yeah, I mean,
get him out of the forward line.
Yeah, if that happens, I'd love to see that, but I'm not sure if they're kind of, you know, brave enough to do that. I don't think, but
yeah, he's a big personality.
Yeah, I think it's a risk to put Buddy in the team this early, and I'm really glad he's in, but I'm just kind of a little bit hesitant as well, because when I said, you know, I'd want Buddy to, you know, he's only played half a reserves practice game. I would have loved to see him play maybe 3 or 4 actual reserves games, so we don't have a Buddy that's walking on eggshells trying not to get injured when he's coming back, but one who's kind of exuding that Buddy style of confidence.
Yeah, and would have given us an opportunity too when the VFL fixtures come out to see him in Melbourne.
Yeah, it'd be nice, wouldn't it?
Just, go to a ground, pay $5-10 entry, sit in your car, and you can watch Buddy Franklin run around in Port Melbourne or something. Or at Coburg Oval.
Yep, sounds pretty nice.
That sounds fantastic. All right, Stephen, thank you so much for coming on. It's been sensational having you on again, so thank you for taking the time.
Yeah, cheers, Justin.
Until next time, cheer the Swans.